Oh hell yeah, I love sitting in the same spot for hours slaying virtual creatures in order to grab their sacks. I can't wait to go back and see how much I can auction these for. Wait, what do you mean they're only selling for 20 silver?
What the f?
The guy on YouTube said they're selling for at least a gold on average. This is bull. Look, I'm gonna be real. I am sick and tired of seeing the same exact BS gold guides being spit out with almost zero effort. Not only are these videos super generic, pretty much copy-paste renditions of each other with minor changes, but they're also usually pretty useless.
Bullshit. You are talentless.
So, let me help you by cutting through the bullshit and explaining my 3-step method. You're going to be so loaded, you don't have to worry about blowing cash the Goldshire in anymore. Oh, and don't worry. This method, it doesn't require the setup of elaborate add-ons, it doesn't require having a ton of gold at the ready to flip shit on the auction house, and it doesn't require a credit card. Because let's be honest, that would be the most efficient way of farming for gold. Look, every single gold guide basically boils down to this. Go into the world, smack some dudes, pillage the corpse, sell in the auction house. Easy win, right?
Wrong!
Well, before any of this fun stuff, we need to work a little bit in reverse. Step 1, let's put ourselves in the shoes of someone who's actually going to the auction house, or better yet, why don't I think about myself for the moment? I go to the auction house weekly for my raid consumes. One of these consumes that I usually spend a ton of gold on is the Fire Breath Chili. So let's take a look at how to actually make the Fire Breath Chili. It requires these items. As you can see, it looks like the small flame sack is actually pretty worth farming right now. And I say right now because things have variance and you need to do your research. So that's step 1, thinking like the customer, thinking about what items they're actually going to buy. And step 2 is looking into those items a bit further. For simplicity's sake, I've done the work for you guys and I've looked up the list of all the consumables that people are looking for, which are here. So aside from like a consumable list, you can also look at raw material list for a certain phase. We're just talking SOD phase 2 because it's always good to use an example. Once we have this list and a good idea of what items that we're pretty sure people are buying, we can do the following. Hop on JP Morgan, search for the item on your server, and see if this item actually moves. Because some servers are more casual friendly than others, and raid consumes aren't always the way to go if you're trying to make money on those servers. So for people who look at this step and think, ew, gross, numbers, just give me 2 seconds and I'm going to break this down and make it as simple as possible. There's only 2 things on this page that matter. The minimum buyout on your server and the amount of items being sold versus the items that are currently on the auction house. First thing is simple. This is literally how much you can expect to sell your items for. Prices are going to fluctuate. So something I recommend doing is looking at the 24-hour version of this graph and the 7-day version of this graph and taking note of a few things like when are the price spikes and as well as is it trending up or down. When you know that something isn't trending down and you know when the price spikes are, you can just look over here, log in at this time, list your shit, and you're good to go. The second part is a bit more complex, but still relatively simple. The amount of items on the auction house is going to represent the level of competition that you have to deal with. Items like Mage Weave Cloth are going to have a crazy amount of competition because practically anybody can farm them and they can be acquired pretty fast. Although Mage Weave Cloth is kind of an exception because there's also a ton of different mobs that are going to drop Mage Weave Cloth, so you can look at a bunch of different areas to farm. So the amount of items, you can kind of think of this like, how much competition should I expect during this time, right? A general rule, although it is important to note, this is not always the case, that I can assume based on this data, items with a ton of activity on the auction house are most likely to have a higher drop rate than those with less activity. Or these items are just required in way more recipes and have such a higher demand that the bots and people are farming them like crazy. because obviously there's going to be items like Gut Ripper that are always going to be in demand and that will move, but have such a low drop rate that you're just not going to see many of them on the auction house. I always suggest that you should check the drop rates of popular farms for specific items as you look into specific items to farm. So when we're talking about drop rates and the amount of farms available, something like Mage Weave Cloth is usually going to be cheaper to sell than some of the other mats. The other thing is the items sold. Now, this is pretty much your assurance that tells you, oh, hey, I know this thing's going to sell for sure. So you don't got to worry about that. And you can use the same method I showed you earlier about looking into the times in which things are selling. So you can try to maximize your chance of selling your specific items. Although for mats, I really wouldn't care too much because they almost always sell when you list them. I would only go and look at the peak times of sales when you're seeing your items be kicked back to you a ton, which I've had happen in the past. You know, I would just fall back on this trick of min-maxing your chances to sell when you're having trouble selling your items, right? We don't want to waste time. So let's go for something that we definitely know is going to sell. Materials sell all the time, so let's look at all the materials we could sell. So now we're on to step 3. We have our item we want to farm, and in this instance, it's the small flame sack. So let's look into a farm that works for this item. I know that in Swamp of Sorrows, there's an area that you can get around 20 of these sacks per hour, so you get about 20 gold per hour, which, you know, isn't a crazy amount, but also if you're a semi-casual player and you're just logging on for an hour here or there to get some extra gold, this is going to add up. Plus, if you are a leather worker / skinner like me, you're going to get a ton of leather and a ton of these scales. So, you know, little emergency tip. If you like to farm shit, make sure your character has at least skinning. It pays for itself over time. I'd also just say, you know, Google for WoW Classic X farm, and you'll probably see a ton of SO videos come up on it, or even Reddit threads, or if nothing comes up, just search the item on Wowhead and sort by percentage drop. That's actually how I found the Swamp of Sorrows farm, like at the beginning of this phase when nobody was over there. And now, when I went to try and even record footage over there, I got ganked by a rogue for like an hour, and I couldn't even kill 2 whelps, so I couldn't even get the footage that I needed. Anyways, yeah, click into the mob, and if there's a ton of dots, you know you're good, and you found a good mob, and it's going to spawn a bunch, and you're solid. So that's step 3 of the method. You pretty much got it. Don't leave just yet, because there is one more thing that you should take away from this video, and it's what I'm about to talk about. And this is timing. Timing is incredibly important. Basically, by having the right timing, you can make sure that your items don't sell for next to nothing. Sometimes when I went to farm the sacks, they were selling for like 20 silver, and I didn't know why. But now they're all pretty much selling for a gold. So I know that right now it's like pretty solid, but always check. This also means that you can predict what's going to happen to item prices. And if you can predict what's going to happen to item prices, you can buy and sell things in bulk. And this is where flipping comes into example. So, for example, at the start of any WoW phase, raw materials that are important for that phase's consumables are going to be crazy expensive. I'm talking like 10x what they are, even just 3-4 weeks into that phase. So do your research before the phase launches. And once you hit max level, the first thing I recommend you do, just start farming. I farmed for like 2 weeks after the phase started, and I was chilling. I had like 300 gold, and then I blew all that gold on random bullshit. But it was just nice having that money and seeing my friends struggle trying to afford their mount because they were broke boys. Because here's the thing. Once bots and the other players start to know what those farms are, they're going to be extremely saturated. Like I said before, I'm running into this issue with the Swamp of Sorrows area, and it's kind of frustrating because it was like my little gem that nobody else was in, and then some dude makes a YouTube video talking about that spot. It blows up. All he says is like, farm these whelps in this area and you're good. And it ruins it for me, but then it also doesn't really help the people watching that video, because it just like, it doesn't teach the principles of understanding how to farm gold. It just is like, this item is selling, go and look for it. But you should really try to dig deeper and analyze and think, well, why is that item selling, and what other items are going to fall in that same category? Anyways, this is probably it for like WoW videos for me for a while, because it's not really what my channel's about. But I am thinking about starting up a little like hardcore story narrative. And if you guys like this style of editing and you like my vibe, feel free to hit the like button and give me a sub. The support really helps me out. And I really hope that this video did make sense and that you did enjoy it, because I tried to make it to where you can understand it at like any level. Anyways, see you guys. Peace. Thank you once again for watching the video.